Okay, not sure why my light's on. Gonna try to figure out what the heck. So, just trying to get my, I think the speed limit here is 70, but I'm just gonna leave it on 65 because, come on, Idaho is so far away. 5 miles an hour isn't gonna make any difference one way or the other. So, I still don't know why my freaking light's on. Let's see if I can try to figure it out. Well, I don't think it's going to make much difference to the video. Anywho, I'm in central Pennsylvania somewhere, not really sure where. And this truck right straight up ahead of me in my lane literally almost ran me off the road just now. He came within about 2 inches of my side mirror here, almost knocked it off. So I promised, I was in the Abel Danger chat earlier. If y'all really want to keep up with what's going on in the world as far as crimes against children, CPS, children being illegally taken from their parents all around the country, but he's got a couple cases that he's specifically focused on right now, then you can look him up. It's Abel Danger. His name is Phil McConnell, and he occasionally gets phone calls from a fella named Mad Dog, and then he gets phone calls from another fella named 107. Now this cat has also been calling, I don't know if he's called Jennifer Mack, but I know he knows of her because he's mentioned her, and I know he knows of Kellyanne Hub. I know that for a fact. So if you go back to the earliest stuff they have on YouTube and Twitter, you can kind of get a lot of the visual proofs and understand how he uses numbers and code, like their comms, the way that they're speaking to us. So someone in the chat tonight was like, I'm still on the fence about JFK Jr. I really don't get it. I don't understand why y'all all think that he's alive. And I was like, are you kidding me? You know, it blows my mind that any of you are still even on the fence over this. So I'm gonna break it down the best I know personally, from proofs and actual tangible things that cannot be denied. Okay, and it all starts in the 1980s. So, well, actually, it started with Tesla. When Nikola Tesla died, apparently the people that found him or whatever, I don't know all of the specifics. I'm just going to give you the general idea of why I believe. You can go back and do your own research. I believe. I don't need to research shit. Okay? So, when Nikola Tesla died, his notebooks and research and all of that, I guess the FBI or the equivalent or whatever, some governmental agency went in there and they were looking at all of this stuff and they couldn't make hide nor hair of it. They had no clue, you know, what they were looking at. So I think they called MIT, or I don't know, they called some college, and you know, they wanted like the foremost expert in, I don't know, physics or whatever. Anyway, that guy apparently allergies are acting up. apparently that fella was not available at the time. So, like an assistant, or, like the number 2 guy got called up. So the number 2 guy goes to Tesla's lab or apartment or wherever all of his paperwork was. And this person was the first person that understood what they were looking at, understood the math, understood when they looked at it, they had a grip on what Tesla had written down. And I think that person kind of maybe ripped out a couple pages or kept a couple notebooks, you know what I'm saying? I know I would, okay? Wouldn't y'all? Tesla, okay? This is freaking Tesla. Alternating currents, people. This guy was basically destroyed by Edison, but he was the brains behind everything. He even said that later in life, I guess, he said if he had known at the time that his invention of alternating currents, AC/DC, y'all get all that, right? Go look it up if you don't. That had he known that it would be used for things like the electric chair to kill people, that he would not have shared it with the world. Like, he would have set us back, who knows how long without that. Because before alternating currents, electricity would be like so demonstrably expensive and hard to maintain. Light bulbs would burst because of the amount of current flowing, and there was no way to control it and recirculate it back to the grid to reuse the unused electricity. So Tesla fixed all of that, and Edison screwed him over. So jump forward, he dies. The big guy isn't available to go through his books. They call the next in line. That guy just happens to be Donald J. Trump's Uncle John. His middle name is named after this guy. Donald Trump, our president's uncle, was the first person with any kind of smarts to understand what he was looking at, to touch Tesla's paperwork, his effects. Okay. So let's just assume, like any other, person, the guy's dead, okay? If you see something in there that makes you go, and for a fact, because of the geopolitical, the corporate structure, the way the world is, that everything is so corrupt, if you know that, then you would know that this is something that needs to be protected. So I'm not saying he stole it so that he could put his name on it and stamp it as his idea. I'm saying he, in good faith, probably took some really important effects from Tesla's things, and he may have passed those down to our beloved president. Okay? So now we're going to jump to the 80s. Actually, we'll stop in the 70s. Nixon was impeached. I don't believe he was impeached for the break-in at the Watergate building. I think he was impeached for the cover-up, but you guys would have to go, like the obstruction, the cover-up. They say the cover-up's usually worse than the crime. Honestly, anything bad ever happens, y'all just call the cops. Jesus. I'd rather spend a couple years in jail over a misunderstanding than go to the lengths that some of the people I used to take care of in the jail went to, and they end up spending the rest of their life in jail. Okay, so, if you do something and maybe somebody comes up dead and it's self-defense, call the cops, okay? All right, that's just my sidebar for today. So Nixon gets impeached. And so all through the 70s and then into the 80s, he's kind of on the fringes still. He resigned the presidency. He wasn't like arrested and let out or whatever. He resigned the presidency to protect the office, the respect and the dignity of the office. Well, at the time that Nixon stepped down over the Watergate issue, at the same time, he had worked a deal with the Vietnamese to get our POWs back. And he was just going to pay them. He was just going to give them the damn money. Just give them the money. I think they were trying to shake us down for, I don't know, some millions of dollars, 4 or 5 million or something like that. Back then, if you said 4 or 5 million, it sounded like 4 or 5 billion now. So, that transfer of money never took place, and we never got our POWs back. And I believe Nixon, I'm sure he felt shame over having to step down from the office, but I think he always, throughout the 70s and into the 80s until he died, I think in the early 90s, like maybe 91. I know my son was a year or two old. So, I think he wanted to redeem himself. I think he didn't want his legacy to just be a shame on his family, shame on his name. So, somewhere in amongst the mid to late 80s, he I'm a little bit more than acquaintance, not like a best friend, befriends Donald Trump. And it's known that they had at least the one meeting because it's known that he had at least one meeting because I don't know what this truck over here's freaking problem is. If I want to do 60 in the rain, I'll do fucking 60 in the rain, asshole. Jesus. These people out here, you know what? If you drive for a living, God bless you. You know what? Here, that's for you, Mr. 157. Anyway, so the truckers are not happy tonight. I don't know what their issue is. Anywho, so we're in the mid to late 80s. Trump, in the very least, met with or conversed with Nixon. Okay, so we've got John Trump with Tesla's papers. We got Nixon trying to redeem himself. We got Trump, who's well on his way at this point from all the talk shows and everything. You can go back and watch all of them. He was on Donahue. He was on Roseanne. Hell, he was on Roseanne with Michael Moore at Tavern on the Green. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, Phil Donahue, Roseanne, he did, later he did Oprah. He was on with everybody, David Letterman, Carson, whole works. So he was well on his way to becoming somewhat of an icon, where you could say Donald and everybody knew who you were talking about, or you could say Trump and everybody knew who you were talking about. So he was well on his way to becoming an icon, but also a brand. So I believe Nixon wrote him a letter. I don't know if he hand delivered it, but for some reason I feel like he did. That something to the effect of, if you run for office, or if you run, you will win. That's what Pat said, his wife. So he was conveying to Trump that his wife, through whatever means, had gleaned that he would win if he ever ran for office. okay? Now, this is in the late 80s. That letter from Nixon about running for office is framed and it's on the wall in the Oval Office today. So, at the same time, Trump and JFK Jr., you know, when you're running in a certain social group, you know, going to the fundraisers, going to the political breakfasts and dinners and the roasts and, you know, all of that, the correspondence dinners and all that. When you're of a certain stature, business-wise or politically, it's kind of expected that you go to some of these things. And so I'm sure Trump and JFK Jr. ran into each other at these things all the time. They actually struck up a friendship. And, you know, they would go to sporting events and things like that. I'm not sure exactly how close their friendship was, but from the pictures when they were photographed together, they look pretty chummy. You know, they kind of look like two brothers sitting side by side, just kind of hanging out, or a brother and an uncle or something. So anyway, so we got all that. That's just your basic foundation. Okay. So then Nixon dies in the early 90s. Trump keeps doing his, you know, his thing. He's up, he's down, he's up, he's down, he's down, 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 he's bankrupt. Well, several of his business ventures went belly up. He was extremely in debt. Like, I don't think he could get a loan. I don't even know. I'm not exactly sure how he kicked and clawed his way back, but he was probably in debt at least half of what he's worth today. So, but, you know, I mean, he was sort of like the butt of everybody's jokes, and the really cool thing about Trump was he just took it, you know, he laughed along with everybody else, but you could always see something in his face whenever anybody would mock him, you know, even though he was being a good sport about it, he just had that look on his face like, you know, God damn it, I'm going to get you back for that. You're going to regret that. So, flash up to the mid to late 90s. JFK Jr. is kind of, you know, he's kind of coming into his own. He's, you know, he's pushing 40. He's settled and married, still doesn't have any kids, but I believe Caroline was pregnant at the time of the plane crash. So 19, 20, 21, he would have, that child would be 20 or 21. And then I believe that is, it's hard to tell. The girl and the boy look like they're about the same age. Man, you know, I don't want to go out on a limb here and say they had twins, but there's a boy and a girl that cannot be anything other than Kennedys, and they look like they're identical age. So it's just hard to tell. To me, it looks like the girl might be a little bit older, but then there's times when the boy smiles and kind of looks sideways, and it's like, you know, he doesn't really have a baby face. So, you know, we'll find out eventually. So, I believe they have either two or possibly a third child. And so, but at the time of the plane crash, you know, there was rumblings. Bill Clinton was coming to the end of his presidency, and, you know, we're kind of in the throes of another election. Hillary's kind of, you know, I want to run for Senate. So she runs for Senate. She, you know, begins the process to run for Senate. She moves to New York. They buy a house. Just laying all the groundwork to run for that Senate seat. So, but at the same time, a lot of people in certain political circles were really pushing and questioning JFK Jr., John, are you sure you don't want to run for that Senate seat? Like, really, come on. And if JFK, if his father was my parents' JFK, then he's mine, okay? And so I wanted him to run, because if you're going to have someone in the Oval Office other than who I believe to be an honorable conservative, then I want it to be someone who does not ever want to be a blight on his family's name, ever. Like, he would never take a bribe. He would never, sell access to the presidency or something like that. He just wouldn't do it. I know he wouldn't. Okay? So Hillary declares, and then all of a sudden they have a plane crash. Here's my problems with the plane crash. One, he'd been flying much longer than they were portraying. They were trying to portray it as he was a beginner and he never flew without a flight instructor on board and all this bullshit. So I was like, okay, that's not true, because how many times did they show pictures of him taxiing alone? So then the other thing was, everyone knew that was kind of watching and saw pictures and all that. Everyone knew whenever he and Caroline, went somewhere, they took the dog Friday with them. So, and he'd had, I don't know if it was a skydiving accident or what the heck he was doing. He had some kind of an accident. He either broke his foot or his ankle or something, and he was in a cast. So it wasn't like he could articulate his foot up and down to run the pedals on the plane. So the plane goes down with, the official story is the plane goes down with JFK Jr., his wife Caroline, who I believe was pregnant, and her sister Lauren. No dog, no flight instructor. So how the hell is he going to fly the plane if he can't move the pedals with his foot because it's in a cast? In addition, the dog not being there is a big red flag. And if there is any chance, any outside chance that Caroline was pregnant, I guarantee you she probably wouldn't even got on the plane. But for sure she wouldn't have got on the plane without the flight instructor, because he couldn't fly the plane with the foot like that. So those are the problems I have with the plane. Then during the search, the Coast Guard's out there, searching. It's not very deep water. They're searching, and then there's a recording of a fella who identifies himself as Todd Bergen. I'm assuming Bergun, of the Coast Guard. Like, he's the spokesman from the Coast Guard, and he's talking with like a dispatcher or the FAA tower or something. And this guy doesn't exist. He's not, there's no one in the Coast Guard with that name. The Coast Guard doesn't have any record of anybody with that name. And nobody seems to know who that was. But if you go back to the Katie Couric interview, the very last televised interview that John did before the plane crash, and listen to the voice. Listen to his voice, the actual voice that we know is him. Then go back and listen to the Todd Bergen recording. So what struck me with the two recordings is, and I had never really noticed this until I started listening to it, there's a slight lisp. He has a slight lisp. So whenever he makes S's or P's, it's just it's a different sound. There's something more pronounced about it. So his S's are like instead of saying presence, he would say presence, like more drawn out. And then his P's, instead of just saying P, he would be like P, 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 like a little bit more of a puff of air when he makes his P's. So when you're listening to the videos, just pay attention to the S's and the P's and listen for that little tiny lisp. It's probably something that he had from when he was a child. It was probably more or less corrected, but it's still slightly there. So I'm knowing all of this. Then I'm listening to Field McConnell. When I first started listening to Q and the Q researchers and the decodes and the alternate news sites, this guy Mad Dog would call in to the radio show. And as I'm listening, I'm going, wait a minute, I know that voice because I've already listened, I've already studied, listened ad nauseum, because I'm thinking I'm losing my mind, right? But at the same time, back when the plane crash happened, I didn't believe it. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, no, they were so young. It wasn't like that. It was like, no, this is not the truth. I did not believe in my gut that this story was true. So, some years later, all this stuff starts hitting the internet, a couple years ago. And I'm like, what? And I'm remembering that feeling I had when I heard this story, and I was like, this is getting really weird. So I'm listening to Phil McConnell originally talking about his sister and the crooked SES and all of these, Serco, all the, the horrible things that they did using the resources of the U.S. Marshals and that. And I was really getting into his show, and then this Mad Dog started calling. I was like, hey, that's the same voice, right? Then this guy named Wano Saven starts calling. And what's weird is it's like if the Mad Dog voice sounds like he's playing like a Midwest Army Ranger type, it kind of has a little swagger in his voice. He's playing a character. He's just got a little bit of swagger, And then the Wano Saven voice is more like a really pissed off college professor. Like he's uncovered the most evil things on the planet, and it's all been kept secret for, a million years, like since the beginning of time. And he's gonna break all this news to us. He's gonna red pill us all with this, crazy bullshit, right? And so it wasn't that I didn't want to believe what he was saying was true. I knew what he was saying was true. I knew. As soon as he started talking, my stomach didn't clench up. My throat didn't get dry. I didn't get overheated like I was being lied to, So at that point, I think I was finally ready to take a real look at the Catholic Church, take a real look at the churches, the pastors, the, you know, charitable industries and children's charities, the Red Cross, the arts and embassies, the political